All right, macro students, here we are with part 2 of our Module 45 video. So we are on page 3. All right, and we are going through the 4 big areas of macroeconomics. We've talked about the business cycle, and now we're going to talk about economic growth. So long-run economic growth, it's the sustained rise in output over time. Sustained means that it's like, to be sustainable means that you can do it for a really long time. So sustained means over time, like over quite a bit of time, it's rising. And output, that just means the amount of stuff produced in an economy. And they usually measure output in terms of a year. So long-run economic growth is a really, really important thing. And let's talk about why. We already talked a little bit about this on the last page. So we talked that if population increased and there is no growth, people have or people become worse off, or they have less. And we want people's lives to improve. So that's long-run growth per capita. Per capita means per person. So per capita means what the average person in that economy or in that country has. So long-run growth per capita means that the average person has more stuff or a higher standard of living now compared to the past. And they say, if in an economy where people, if it's a very poor country and people are generally not okay, they don't have enough to be okay. The way to get them to be okay is to have long-run per capita growth in that country. And we talked in Unit 1 about how economic growth can happen. And we talked about how long run, or how economic growth can look like that outward shift of that PPF. Remember where we had the first PPF and then the second PPF. So that outward shift of a PPF, it shows economic growth. And now on that other page, we saw how over time, the business cycle goes up and down, but over time it is going up. So this is labeled time and output. Okay, so economic growth is a really, really important thing. It can be caused by advances in technology. It can be caused by increasing human capital, which is education and training. And it can be caused by increasing our natural resources available to us. So that is long-run economic growth. So economists care about that because it's one way to make more people okay. All right, page 4 of our Mod 45 notes. So price stability, talking about inflation and deflation. The term inflation, this is a term that every adult needs to know. It's talking about the fact that prices are rising on most goods and services. So they will measure, the average price of a bunch of different goods and services in our country. And if the average price went up since the year before, that means we had inflation. The prices went up. And we really, really care about inflation. Because it means when prices go up, it means we can't buy as much with our money. And we're going to talk more about inflation in some coming modules. Now, inflation means prices are going up or rising. Deflation means prices are lowering or going down on most goods and services. We do not see a lot of deflation. We see way more inflation. All right, consequences of inflation, like we just mentioned, you can't buy as much stuff. Okay, it means that if a year ago you could buy, if you had $100, you could buy like 50 $2 candy bars. Well, if those candy bars turned into $3 each, you can't buy 50 of anymore with $100. You can only buy what? 33 and a third. So you can't buy as much stuff when there is inflation. But inflation has always been around, right? So like, and we're not like super worried about it all the time, even though it's always happening. And that's because our wages go up as well. Our income goes up as well. So you can't buy as much stuff, parentheses, if our wages didn't increase. So I'm going to come back to that in just a second. Expected or like normal or expected inflation is actually 2 to 3% a year, which means that the amount of money that a person makes, their wages, their income, needs to increase by 2 to 3% a year just to be able to buy the same amount of stuff that they could the year before. So if you're working a job and you do not get at least a 2 to 3% raise every single year, it's like you're actually making less money each year. That's not a good thing. So price stability, it doesn't mean that there's, to be stable means like it doesn't really change. So with price stability, they're not saying that there is no inflation. It just means that the inflation doesn't get too high, that it just stays at that normal expected inflation of 2 to 3%. So price stability means inflation doesn't get too high. So it stays at 2 to 3%. Okay. And we are going to talk more about inflation in some coming modules. That was just your little intro to it. All right, page 5, last page of this module, trade imbalances. You have probably heard a lot about how like the United States trades a lot with China and how we buy way, way more stuff from China than we sell to China. That's called a trade imbalance. Some people think that they're horrible, terrible things, but according to your book and according to a lot of economists, they're not so bad. So let's go through some of the stuff that we need to know. So we just said this, the US doesn't buy as much from other countries as it sells to other countries. We need to know what exports are. Exports are goods that leave the country. I remember it because exports exit the country. So that means that they were made in the United States, if we're thinking from the point of view of the US. Made in the US, sold in another country. That's an export. So we can write that. Made in US, sold in other country. Okay. Exports exit the country. Imports come into the country. So imports are goods brought into the country. And imports, they were made somewhere else and sold in the US. From the point of view of the United States. A trade deficit means that there are more imports than exports. So trade deficit means that they're importing a lot of stuff, bringing a lot of goods into the country, but not exporting as much. So that means that a lot of money is coming into the country. I said that wrong. That means that a lot of stuff is coming into the country. A lot of those imports are coming in the country. And then a lot of money is leaving the country. Trade surplus, that means more exports than imports. All right, so does the United States have a trade deficit or a trade surplus? Think about that for a second. Does the United States, okay, we buy a lot of stuff from China, so that would be made in China, coming here, import. But we don't make as much stuff here that we export. So we have a trade deficit. However, a lot of people will be like, oh, that's terrible. Oh my goodness. But it really does not indicate the health of an economy. The United States often has a very healthy economy, and we still have a lot of imports. And some people think that's a good thing because we get a lot of stuff that way. And what we really like is stuff. They get the money, we get the stuff. All right. And we will be talking more about it, trade imbalances, not this unit, but in a later unit. All right. Do not forget to do your summary. Do not forget to come to the Google Meet session so that we can talk about all this and, help it click. Students are saying that's the most important thing they do to help them understand all of this stuff. And please do not forget to email me and ask me all of your questions. If you want to set up a one-on-one Google Meet study session with me, we can get that done. All right, everyone, take care.